Thank you very much, Dr. Wayne Ledwaba, for that insightful keynote address. I think this is a prime example of it starts with a conversation like this. However, I'm so blessed to hear how he even walks the talk and practice what he preaches. And this is what inspires, especially the younger generations. We come from a society that there's too much posturing, virtue signaling. But when you hear someone who has walked that walk and humbled themselves at the not so tender age of 27 and submit to a process that many look down upon, is really inspiring. And I think I'm relatively touched by that, story. And I would like to encourage all of us to also continue in that spirit of vulnerability to share our deeper stories, because it's these conversations that inspire, conversations that come from the heart. And with that said, we are about to start our very interactive segment of our presentation. And I did indicate to you that we have some esteemed guests amongst ourselves, representative of the Honorable Mayor. We have royalty amongst us. And so, ladies and gentlemen, I'd really like us to show our best efforts as we engage in our dialogue. Let's lead the conversation with love and less of fear. We are here to build each other. And at this point, I'm going to call Ntando Makwela Mncube Mzilikatha to come forward. In this segment, they're going to be leading us in the conversation how young men can use their development time to mold themselves into better men and discover a true sense of masculinity. So this segment is going to be a little bit interesting. We're going to put a youthful twist in it. It's something called podcasting format. If you've seen on YouTube how podcasters usually engage, it's very robust, very exciting, and very energetic. So we're going to keep the conversations to a maximum of 10 minutes where they share their thought. And then after that, we're going to have a roaming mic that's going to go to the audience, and we're going to engage. And joining Ntando Makwela Mncube Mzilikatha will be Thabo Morabe and Rodney Tebane. They will be engaging on the impact that a change in socioeconomic status can have on a relationship. I'd like them also to join us on the panel here. That's Thabo Morabe and Rodney Tebane. Ladies and gentlemen, some of these guests I do not know, so you can rest assured I'm not going to take any sides in the discussion. And I don't know who is coming. It's the first time, as you meet them coming, I'm also meeting them for the first time. Thank you. Be excited. The more I see smiles, the more I feel relaxed. Right now, I'm seeing a lot of serious faces. Beautiful people, but serious faces. And I know you mean business, but hey, you're making me nervous up here. All right. Ntando Makwela, this next 10 minutes is yours. Do best.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Ntando Makwela. I'm 22 years old. I'm an author of The Dynamic Kid, and I'm also a Brand SA Play Your Part ambassador. I want to give my thanks to Mam Nomsa for inviting me and to all of you for coming here. When I was approached with the idea of speaking to men, I understood that I could only speak from my own perspective as a young man. You know, they say you can't speak up to your elders because they know more than you do. So I'm going to keep it brief. Just want to touch mainly on what young men also are dealing with at this time. You know, as men, we face a situation where a lot of modern conceptions around men talk about how men need to change, how men need to be fixed. And as a young man, you find yourself in a difficult place where the world that needed to be fixed, or the world of the older men, is a world you don't know. Yet the world that needs to change also paints you as a person that needs to change. So you find yourself in this place where there's always something of you that needs to be fixed. You know, as a young man, you need to have your journey complete. You have to have your life on track. You have to have certain things in order. But no one really talks about what can a young man do now. There's always this thought of a young man needs to develop into something, or there needs to be this destination that this young man needs to get to. And I'm not saying that there isn't a destination that we need to get to as young men, but we are men right now. And this notion that because you're a young man, or because you don't have children, or because you're not in this space, you're not a man, that I think causes a lot of the problems that we end up meeting when we become older. Because when you do become an older man, you have children, or you have these things. I can't speak from experience, but from what I've heard, it doesn't feel like you're complete. There's always this thing as a man, I'm not complete, I'm not finished. So what I want to encourage, especially other young men in my situation and in the situation that other young men are facing, is that we are men as we are. A man, unlike ladies, we're never a finished product. You know, as a man, there's always something that you need to become. There's always this thing of, you know, there's a performance that you need to do in order to become a man. And I believe that the young man's greatest asset is time. And the greatest asset we have is this opportunity that we have. As much as we have the difficulty of trying to address what men must become, or what new masculinity is, or what does it mean to become a man in this modern world where a lot of the definitions aren't so clear, I believe there's an opportunity to synthesize the different versions of ourselves. And I've come up, in my research, I've come up with 3 kinds of men that I've seen develop throughout history. The first man, I'm sure we've heard quite a bit about him, the traditional man, the man who needs to contribute to his society, who needs to be strong, who needs to take leadership. There's also another man that we kind of skirt over, and this man comes out of the Enlightenment. We kind of call him the modern man, or the man that just came before the men of today. This man is supposed to be valuable in himself, right? This idea of, you know, your James Bond or the Bachelor or the hero, the man who comes in and saves the day, the man who is strong, the man who has all the virality, right? You know, he's got the vitality. Doesn't matter how old he is, you know, James Bond. Doesn't matter how old he gets, the ladies are always after him. So there's this kind of man. And I think the third man is kind of the man that we kind of see prop up today. And I call him the transforming man, or the critical man, because this man comes out of the criticisms of the men that I just spoke about before, right? The idea that an excessive demand in terms of leadership can lead to oppression. An excessive demand in becoming a bachelor and becoming the man's man leads to fatherless homes. So how do we deal with this problem? And this critical man is a man who has to deal with kind of the past, the men of the past, and this idea of what manhood used to be in order to form the new man. And we see that a lot of this conversation, unfortunately, it's not being spoken by us, it's being spoken to us. And as much as ideas like feminism helped reshape the discourse, what they've led to is a man who's not in control of who he's supposed to be. A man who is being dictated to as to what he must be by other people, especially people who do not understand what it is like to be a man. You hear all the time in society that a man can't tell a woman anything, right? A woman is a woman, and a woman has her own experience. And that is very much the case. And so it must be on the other side. We can't allow other people to dictate. And the reason why women have to tell us is because we don't have the men around us to tell us. This is what it means to be a man. This is what it means to be sure in yourself. And for young men, we have to be the ones now to not only move away from the problems of the past, but build a future. And without generational connection, it becomes very difficult to do that. But there is some good news. With all of the wisdom that we have, with all of the opportunities that we have, young men are in a better place than they think to reinvent themselves and to create a man that society can be proud of. I want to leave 4 keys to this before I end. The first is a vision. All men need a vision. All men need a purpose for what they have to do. And as a man, we must understand our roles as dual. Firstly, to the self, because a man who is not strong in himself is of no use to society and is of no benefit to those around him. So an individual vision is important, but also a vision for the community. To say, what is my role as a man? What is my role in helping others, in helping younger men? The ones younger than me will need someone who can understand where they're coming from, understand their challenges, and it's up to me as a man to develop a vision that incorporates that. The second key is very unique to young men. Not to say that older men don't have this, but as I'm sure with time and with responsibilities, we have less control of this as we get older. And this is the idea of energy, right? As a young man, we are pure potential. Because what we are is not set in stone, what we can be is that much greater. And in order to enforce that potential, in order to push that idea of potential forward, there needs to be a selection. We need to be selective as young men to say, this is exactly what I'm going to put my energy and my focus on. There's a lot of misconceptions that, as a man, you need to be able to do this and do that and do everything. But that comes in time, When you become a father, you have to now. It's not just necessarily a thing in your head. But as a young man, you have the opportunity to be very selective with what you do with your time, the friends you hang out with, the kinds of resources that you use, the kind of things that you put yourself to. Because when you get older, you will reap the benefits of those things. The third thing is reflection. We need to understand that as men, as much as we are powerful, as much as we are strong, we are not perfect. We are all men with flaws. And those flaws must be acknowledged. Otherwise, they lead to greater corruption. The reason why we see the struggle that we have now with the men is because we are not brave enough to admit our flaws. I'm not saying now you must cry every day or cry into a corner or anything like that. I know a lot of the time when they say men must cry, they make it seem as if we must act like women. No. As men, we have our way of dealing with our emotions, but we must deal with them, right? So just because I'm a man must not be an excuse for me not to deal with my emotion. Just because I don't cry doesn't mean I'm not dealing with sadness, right? Just because I'm not depressed doesn't mean I'm not dealing with stress. And as men, we must find our ways, because we've been given this biologically. We can handle more load. We must be able to deal with that load before it becomes even too much for a man. And we must also understand that the knowledge that we have access to, even if it's not face to face, even in homes where the father is not there, or where our male role models are not physically with us, with the internet, we have the opportunity to see men and see resources that are from history, from all over the world. The best men are there. But of course, you must be selective, because there's also the wrong men there. So you need to be selective in what information and knowledge you choose. And the last thing is leadership. This is using our ability in a positive way that changes other people. As men, we must not only lead our families, we must not only lead society, but we must lead other men. This is the key towards transformation. This is the key towards development. We must lead each other as men. We must be accountable to each other as men. In that, a man who's a father, who's struggling with fatherhood, needs to have an access to a man who is a leader in that realm. A man who's struggling with this needs to have a man who's a leader in that realm and a leader in that realm. And as a young man, through gaining the resources, through all of these keys that I've left, the hope is that the young men will start to grow in that, to grow into that position, to understand that society does need you. Regardless of what people will say, oh, I don't need a man. Our world, the problems in our world are because our men are not there. The world that we're seeing now is crying out for strong men. It's crying out for capable men. There's nothing this world needs more than a man. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ntando. Ladies and